It may sound harsh, but pause for a moment. When was the last time you tried to save someone? Maybe it was an ex. You once believed that if you were patient enough, they would change. Maybe it was a family member, someone who kept repeating the same mistakes, while you kept talking, helping, clinging. Or maybe it was a friend drowning in pain, failure, addiction, and you told yourself, if I don't help, who will? At first, you called it compassion. Then you called it responsibility. Eventually, you just called it duty. And at some point, you stopped calling it anything at all. You just knew you had to carry the weight. You had to show up. You had to be better than yourself to fix someone else's life. But have you noticed, the more you try to fix them, the more they drift further from themselves. The more you try to save, the more you lose yourself. Not because you weren't good enough, not because they were too broken, but because you were headed the wrong way from the very first belief, that belief. If I just try hard enough, they'll change, is the sweetest trap your mind has ever set, to keep you from looking inward. You didn't want to face your own helplessness. You didn't want to feel the growing void inside. You didn't want to admit that you were slowly falling apart, even while trying to save someone else. So you chose a role. The one who sacrifices, the one who shows up, the one who never lets anyone go. It looks like strength, but truthfully, it comes from fear. Fear of being left, fear of becoming meaningless, fear of sitting down and facing yourself and realizing you were never really okay. I'm not saying helping others is wrong, but there's a very thin line between support and control, between love and forcing someone to change into the version you want. Are you willing to look at that? Have you ever loved someone, not for who they truly were, but for who you believed you could turn them into? You loved someone broken and became their therapist. You loved someone selfish and doubled your kindness to balance it out. You loved someone who never knew how to love you and still believed your love could do it for them. And when they didn't meet your expectations, you got hurt. You got disappointed. You blamed them and then turned the blame on yourself. Maybe if I just tried a little harder. But here's the truth you need to pause and hear just once, clearly. No, you didn't lack effort. No, you weren't too weak. No, you didn't love the wrong way. You were just using love to hide a deeper truth. You don't know how to love yourself. You're quick to fix others, but you avoid fixing yourself. You see what's wrong with everyone else, but you're blind to the wound growing inside you every day. You know what? Someone who can't swim can't save a drowning person. Someone who hasn't healed can't truly inspire others to heal. Someone who doesn't understand themselves, even if they act for others, is still just running from themselves. Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Saving others sometimes is just that kind of avoidance. You know you need to change, but instead of turning inward, you go outward. You attach yourself to lives more broken than yours, so you feel less broken. You do everything for them, so you don't have to ask yourself, who am I, if I have no one left to save? That's why you feel exhausted, not because you gave too much, but because you gave it to the wrong places. You gave away your life force without keeping any to light your own path. You think they need you, but in truth you need them to give you a reason to keep going. Have you ever realized that what scares you isn't that they might fall into darkness? What scares you is that if there's no one left to save, you'll have to look into the darkness inside yourself. And that's why you haven't let go. You call it sacrifice. But truthfully, it's an addiction to feeling important, an addiction to being needed, an addiction to escaping your own loneliness by attaching yourself to someone else's pain. You don't need to feel ashamed of that, but you do need to wake up. Wake up to see that life doesn't need you to save anyone. Life is just waiting for you to return to yourself. You can choose to keep going, push a little harder, give a little more, or you can choose to stop and ask the question you've avoided for so long. Who am I? If I'm not fixing anyone anymore, don't answer it yet. Let that question open a new door. You've silently blamed others before. Why don't they appreciate everything I've done for them? You've asked yourself, I've tried so hard, why haven't they changed? And maybe, in your quietest nights, you've whispered the same sentence over and over. Maybe I'm the only one who's been genuine in this relationship. But today I'm not here to tell you to try harder. I'm not here to make you feel like a poor victim either. I'm only here to ask you this time, with no excuses. What am I holding on to that's keeping me stuck in trying to fix someone else? Don't answer too quickly. Just observe. Maybe you're holding on to an image of the good person you were taught to be since childhood. You were told to help, to sacrifice, to endure for others. Maybe you heard it too many times. You have to think of others first. And you lived by that until you no longer even knew whether those others truly needed or even wanted your help. Are you carrying an old wound from your childhood? Maybe you were abandoned. Maybe you were never truly heard. Maybe you had to grow up too fast. And you learned this: if I don't try hard enough, if I'm not good, no one will want to keep me. So you became the one who never leaves. You tried to save everyone, as if you were saving that wounded child you once were. But here's something you need to admit. No justifications allowed. You cannot fix someone else to heal yourself. You cannot use outer actions to fill the emptiness inside. The more you try to fix them, the more you lose yourself. You stop living, you start reacting. You become an emotional supply station where everyone comes to unload, but no one stops to ask if you're okay. You let others use you like a map, but you don't even know where you are on your own map anymore. You think you're doing the right thing, but the truth is, you've been swapped out of your own life. You're no longer living your story. You're playing a role others expect from you. The good one, the listener, the one who never says no, the one who's always there to save. Maybe you've even forgotten what it feels like to have someone truly be there for you. Not because they needed fixing, but because they wanted to understand you. When was the last time someone looked at you without needing you to do anything for them? When was the last time you said no and didn't feel guilty about it? When was the last time you paused long enough to ask, what am I truly living for? Or, are you only living so others won't think you've given up? Here's the deeper reason. You're stuck. You've tied your self-worth to your ability to save others. If someone changes because of you, you feel worthy. If they don't, you feel like a failure. You're not loving. You're handing the definition of who you are over to someone else. Every time they fall, it hurts you. Every time they go back to their old patterns, it feels like betrayal, not because they owe you, but because you placed your hope in the wrong place. You hoped that if you just held on long enough, they'd become the version you imagined. But they didn't, because it's their life, not yours. You can guide, you can advise, you can stay close, but you cannot walk their journey for them. That's what Stoicism teaches so clearly. Control what you can, accept what you cannot. You cannot control someone's growth. You cannot force healing if they don't want it. You cannot change someone just because you love them so deeply. And here's what you need to remember. Not all love is strong enough to save someone, and not everyone deserves the most effortful version of you. You don't need to fix someone to feel valuable. You only need to look into yourself and ask why you always need to feel needed. When you understand that, you'll feel lighter. You'll stop trading your life for the hope that someone might eventually change because of you. You'll stop getting dragged into battles that aren't yours. You'll learn how to walk away without feeling like you lost. Because sometimes letting go isn't giving up. It's a declaration. I choose to return to myself. I choose to live my life. I choose to understand me instead of saving someone who doesn't want to be saved. You've laughed before, not because you were happy. You laughed just so people wouldn't ask more questions. You've said, "I'm fine," but deep down, you were hoping someone would be sharp enough to see through the lie. You were the one always present, always listening, always trying to make things easier. But in every relationship, you were always the one to feel exhausted first. Has anyone ever asked, do you need someone to listen to you? Has anyone cared? What are you battling every single day? Or do they only see you as someone who can probably take a bit more, a shoulder that doesn't get tired, a pillar that's not allowed to shake? You've become the anchor for others to hold on to during the storms in their lives. But you can't even remember who has ever been the anchor for you. No one. And you don't blame them. You've just grown used to it being silent. You're used to being the support no one catches when you fall. You're used to giving without asking, but also never receiving anything complete in return. Maybe you once said, "I don't need much," just for them to change. But do you see it now? They haven't changed. And you, bit by bit, you've been changing in ways that make you no longer recognize yourself. You used to be gentle. Now you snap easily. You used to be patient. Now you're just silent. You used to be full of hope. Now you're repeating old patterns like a machine running on its last battery. You call it love. But what kind of love makes you feel emptier every day? You call it sacrifice. But what kind of sacrifice drains your very will to live? You once thought, just a little longer. But how many years has that little longer lasted? You're still there, still trying to fix others like a craftsman worn down by every touch. You know their every weakness, every wound, every shadow. But you can no longer see yourself in the mirror, just a blurred figure, someone who used to be vibrant, now existing only as a backdrop for others to keep moving forward. Do you recognize yourself in this sentence? You spent your youth trying to make someone see your worth, without ever asking if you truly wanted to live that life. You might be great at reading other people's emotions but can't name your own. You notice when they're sad, but don't realize you're burnt out. You see their patterns, but won't admit you're stuck in a toxic loop. You repeat the same script. Meet someone broken, jump in to help. Get hurt in return, can't let go. Then find the next broken person. There's a part of you that believes, I was born to heal others. But no one told you. If you keep doing that while you're still broken, you'll widen your own cracks until you lose your ability to feel anything at all. You think you're helping the world, but in truth you're silently trading away yourself. Every time you try to save someone who doesn't want to be saved, you chip away another piece of your own trust in yourself. Carl Jung once said, no one can step into another's darkness unless they have first stepped into their own. You're doing the opposite. You dive into their pain with a heart that's still unhealed. You embrace their chaos while you're still patching yourself together, and you call it kindness. But kindness should never leave the kind-hearted empty. You're being kind, but in a self-destructive way. You're loving, but in a way that wounds you daily. And the worst part, you're used to it. You treat your pain as a given. You treat being misunderstood as normal. You treat carrying everything as proof that you matter. That's not love. That's abandoning yourself in the name of loving others. You might argue, but without me, they'd fall apart. You might say, I do it because I care. You might insist, I expect nothing in return. But if that's true, why are you still so tired? Why do you still feel alone at night? Why do you keep wishing, if only someone could understand me? Don't you want to be understood? Are you sure? Or have you buried that need so deep, you now wear the mask of the savior, just so no one sees you're the one who needs saving? You don't have to play that role anymore. No one loves you because you carry everything. No one stays just because you endure. The one truly meant for you will see you even at your weakest, will stay not for what you do, but because they know you deserve love. Even when you're doing nothing at all. But you'll never meet that person if you keep hiding in the shadow of being the healer. You have the right to be tired. You have the right not to be the one who always holds on. You have the right to walk away from a relationship, not because someone's wrong, but because you no longer see yourself in it. And strangely enough, when you stop, when you turn inward, when you choose to understand yourself instead of rescuing others, that's when you finally touch the strongest part of who you are. Not strong because you endured, but strong because you no longer need to prove anything. You are yourself, and that is enough. Her name was Elise, a smart woman with a big heart and one unshakable belief. I was born to heal others. She met him at 27, in a noisy bar she hadn't come to for fun, but in hopes of finding something that made her feel alive again. He sat alone, red eyes, a frail body, and a gaze that looked like it wanted to disappear from the world. She approached, not because he was attractive, but because in that moment she saw herself. She had once been the child abandoned by her father, grew up in a cold home, where yelling was louder than any kind voice. From a young age, she learned, if I'm not useful, I'll be left behind. And so, she became an expert at saving others. Every time someone collapsed, she showed up. Every time someone needed a place to lean, she gave everything. She lived for others. Because, deep down, she didn't know what it meant to live for herself. Meeting him reactivated all her old instincts. He was an alcoholic, depressed, unemployed, came with a chaotic family history. The only thing he had was a faint smile, as if saying, I have nothing left to lose. Elise thought, if I don't save him, who will? So she began. She took him to rehab, wrote his resume, cleaned his house, cooked, paid off his debts. She did everything a wife would do. Even though they had only known each other for a few months, she believed, if I love him enough, he'll change. A year passed. He was still drinking, still useless, still lashed out whenever she talked about change. But Elise didn't give up. She thought, maybe I'm just not patient enough. So she kept going, kept fixing, kept sacrificing. She drifted away from friends, turned down a great job offer, afraid to leave him alone. She lived in a constant state of self-erasure, just so he wouldn't fall apart. Then one day, she found out he was cheating. Not once, many times, with different people. While she was working 2 jobs to support him, she confronted him. He laughed. You act like a saint, but you're just fixing people to feel valuable. You never truly loved me. That sentence was a slap, but the kind that wakes you up. That night, Elise broke down, not from betrayal, but because, finally, there was nothing left to hold on to. She sat in that messy apartment, and for the first time, felt nothing to cling to. No rage, no blame, just emptiness. Then, a question emerged. If there's no one left to save, then who am I? She cried, not for him, but because she realized, for years, she hadn't really lived. She had been replaying an old wound, with new faces, fixing others, to avoid facing the wounds she had never healed. It took Elise a year to fully walk away, not just from the man, but from the false self who kept striving to be needed. She cut ties, moved to a new city, started therapy, wrote out every thought she'd been hiding, and each day she asked herself one question. Today, am I living in alignment with my inner truth? Elise no longer tries to save people. She doesn't overextend. She no longer chases anyone. She doesn't need to be important in someone's eyes to feel worthy of life. And strangely, since she stopped fixing others, the world around her began to realign. True friends returned. Her family started respecting her boundaries. New people no longer saw her as the healer, but as a whole person. She shared her story on a podcast and ended with one sentence, as if speaking to anyone who had ever lived the way she once did. I don't hate my ex. I just regret spending so many years searching for value by fixing others. If I could go back, I would tell that 27-year-old girl, you don't need to save anyone to be loved. You just need to learn how to love yourself, and everything else will follow. Your mistake isn't that you loved. Your mistake lies in believing that love equals fixing, endurance equals kindness, sacrifice equals nobility. What you don't see is that every act you make, every effort to keep someone in your life, might be rooted in a deeper mechanism, the mechanism of denying yourself. Because when someone doesn't truly understand what they need, hasn't healed their own wounds, hasn't yet distinguished between love and the fear of abandonment, they easily confuse emotional dependence with love, and from there begins the journey of fixing others, as if they're the only one who can save them. That is not love. That is control, disguised as morality. It is the need to feel important, wrapped in the statement, I'm doing this for you. Stoicism makes this clear. We cannot control others. We can only control our own will, our own response, our own thoughts. So every time you try to fix someone, you're crossing a boundary between you and them. You're stepping into someone else's life, carrying your own expectations, and calling it love. But love does not mean manipulation. Love does not mean growing on their behalf. Love does not mean forcing them to change, just so you feel secure. Say this with me, slowly. No, you don't love them too much. You just haven't learned to love yourself. No, you're not too kind that it hurts. You simply don't dare to set boundaries. Do you see this? You're not upset because they were wrong. You're upset because they didn't become the version you imagined. You're not in pain because they made you sad. You're in pain because you tied your self-worth, your identity, your value to this idea. If they change, it means I am worthy. You wanted validation. You wanted someone to prove you are lovable. And the fastest way to feel that was to become the person who could change someone's life. It sounds noble, but actually, it's deception. You use the excuse of doing it for them to run from a deeper fear. The fear of being invisible, the fear of having no meaning, the fear of being forgotten, the fear of sitting alone and admitting, I've never truly understood who I am. Do you know the blind spot of those who love to save people? They believe they're never wrong. They believe if everyone were like them, the world would be better. They believe fixing others is the solution, without realizing the real solution is to stop. No one owes you their transformation, not even the person you love most. And you're not responsible for saving anyone, because you are not God. You only need to live true to the most honest part of your soul. And from that place, you'll attract the right people. People who don't come to be fixed, but to grow together. You don't need to win every relationship. Some relationships, your only role is to learn how to walk away. Because sometimes real growth doesn't lie in holding on to someone, but in knowing exactly when to let go and letting go without feeling like you lost. Remember this, it's not that they didn't love you because you weren't enough. They just didn't have the depth to love at the level you offered. What you need is not someone to fix, but a space to return to yourself. Every time you find yourself falling into the savior role, Carl Jung had a powerful concept, the shadow, the unconscious self. He said, if we don't face the darkness within us, we'll project it onto others. We'll see others as needing to be fixed, when in truth, we're the ones who are lost. And that's what you must face, with full honesty. You don't fix others because you're enlightened. You do it because you haven't yet seen your own shadow. Stop, place your hand on your chest, take a deep breath, and say truthfully to yourself, I don't need to save anyone anymore. I just need to live true to myself. And that is the kindest thing I can do for this world. To summarize, there are 3 major knots to untie. You are not the healer. You are the one still unhealed, using others as an escape. You didn't fail because they didn't change. You're just disappointed because you expected the wrong thing. You don't need to keep fixing others. You just need to start fixing the false beliefs within yourself. And finally, never forget this Stoic truth. He who tries to fix others before understanding himself will forever remain lost in the illusion of goodness. You're not strong because you always stay. You're not noble because you never let go. And you're not more lovable just because you've fixed more people than anyone else. Don't mistake your inability to leave for loyalty. Don't call the act of sacrificing yourself love. And don't paint the role of the healer as if that's your life's purpose. No, you weren't born to be a dumping ground for others' pain. You have no obligation to keep someone in your life at any cost. And you don't need a noble reason to stop saving people. You don't need to keep trying. You just need to stop long enough to hear the one question that's been waiting for you. If I'm no longer fixing anyone, who am I? You know what? No one in this life needs you to be a hero. No one will love you more for carrying more weight. And no one will thank you for sacrificing your life just to fix theirs. In fact, the more you try to fix others, the more invisible you become in your own life. The more you try to be the anchor, the more you lose your own footing. The more you try to save, the further you drift from your own soul. You don't need to keep going. You don't need to send one more long text. You don't need one more reason to stay. You don't need to hold on just one more time. You don't need anyone to change in order to be loved. You just need the courage to look reality in the face and accept. If they don't want to change, I have no reason to stay. You've fixed enough people. Now it's time to fix something far more important. The belief that you only matter if someone needs you. No, you don't need to be needed to deserve to exist. You don't need to carry someone else's growth to feel meaningful. You just need to exist in truth. The truth that you, too, have limits. That you, too, deserve to be loved the way you love others. That you're worthy of being understood without having to try so hard. And if someone can't offer you that, they're not someone you need to hold on to. They're someone you need to let go of. Whether it's a partner, a family member, a friend, or someone you once gave everything for. If they don't want to change on their own, you are not responsible for doing it for them. No, you're not irresponsible for letting go. No, you're not ungrateful for choosing to stop enduring. No, you're not cold for turning away from a relationship that makes you lose yourself. Letting go is awakening. Holding on is staying asleep. Letting go is accepting that no one can save anyone who doesn't want to be saved. Holding on is choosing to live in the illusion that you have the power to change someone else's world when you haven't even begun to understand your own. Do you know what hurts the most? It's not that they didn't change. It's the moment you realize you've been waiting for them for years, while never once stopping to ask, how have I changed? While staying with someone who refuses to grow. You are no longer yourself. You've become the exhausted version, anxious, guarded, drained. You've lost the light in your eyes just to keep someone else from falling into darkness. And if you keep going, there'll be nothing left to keep for yourself. So today, repeat after me. not with your words, with your actions. I no longer save others. I choose to save myself first. I no longer carry it all. I choose to rest. I no longer stay where no one truly sees me. I choose to leave to start again, with a life where I am the center. And you know what happens next. When you begin to understand yourself, you no longer need someone to validate your worth. When you dare to set boundaries, you start attracting people who respect them. And when you stop obsessing over fixing others, you finally have the time to explore who you truly are, deep beneath every scar. Carl Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart." Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. So ask yourself, do you want to keep dreaming, or are you ready to wake up? You are not being tied down by anyone. You're just holding on to an invisible string called "I must be good." Let it go. You don't need to be forgiven for choosing yourself. You don't owe anyone an explanation for needing to pause. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. The truth is already clear. You don't need anyone to change. You just need to stop waiting for change from those who never wanted to change in the first place. You've tried hard enough. Tried to be the strong one. Tried not to let go of anyone. Tried to fix every broken piece in others. While falling apart inside yourself, you've lived too long in the role of the savior. To the point, you forgot one thing. No one ever saved you. No one ever asked, "Are you okay? Are you tired? Do you really want to keep going? Or are you just living out the habit of being strong?" And maybe you never asked yourself that either. You just kept going, because you didn't know where you'd end up if you stopped. You kept on enduring, because you didn't know who you'd be if you had no one left to help. But today, you don't have to keep going, not because you're giving up, but because it's time to look back, look deep, and admit, I never truly understood myself. I just lived in a way that made others see me as worthy. I loved, so I wouldn't be abandoned. I fixed others, so I wouldn't have to fix myself. It's okay. You're not the first to live that way. And you won't be the last. We've all been Elise, or are Elise, in some form. We've all confused love with obligation, kindness with dysfunction, selflessness with lack. But the good news is, you're still here, still listening, which means you're ready. Ready for a life where you no longer have to fix anyone, no longer have to hold anyone, no longer have to make someone better. All you have to do is live truthfully, live rightly, live lightly. Starting tomorrow, or even right now, you can begin again. Not with a giant leap, but with a deep breath, with one disconnection from what's draining you, with one acceptance that I also deserve to be loved, not just to love. Carl Jung said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And you can choose. Choose to stop being the healer and start healing yourself. Choose to stop chasing someone who won't change and sit down to face the mess within. Choose to stop carrying and start resting. Because here's the truth. You don't need anyone to understand you. You just need to stop waiting for that from those who never did. You don't need anyone to validate your worth. You just need to stop proving it through fixing others. You don't need to keep going. You just need to choose to stop at the right time. And if you're wondering, if I'm not saving others anymore, what will I do? The answer is, you'll start living. For the first time, not for anyone, not for expectations, not to prove anything, just for you. Because you deserve a life where you don't have to fix anyone to be loved. If you still feel a lump in your chest, just pause, just for a moment, to listen, not to the noise outside, but to the whisper of your soul inside. It's been waiting for you for so long. If you've ever loved someone so much, you lost yourself. If you ever hoped they would change for you, If you've ever quietly endured an unfair relationship just to not feel useless, watch the next video. You were not broken. You were buried. There you'll understand. You were never the problem. You were just buried under too many things that never belonged to you. You've saved enough people. This time, turn back and save yourself. If fate allows, we'll meet again. But by then, you'll be someone who chose to live for yourself, not to be loved. But because you're truly worth living for,